Look, we're all going to struggle at times as elk hunters. And last week we talked about how to revisit those struggles and come back even stronger. But on tonight's show, for part two of the discussion, it's all about becoming an efficient elk hunter, what it means, and what it takes. Look, y'all, this is about sharing years and years of experience to help you take it to the next level, consistently and efficiently. Those topics, along with our ElkBros shout-outs and questions from our ElkBros mailbox. So, my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your hosts Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy the show. And for those blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of the show, coming to you from Spring, Texas, and from Katy, Texas, the one and only. That's right, Luis Gonzalez is in the house. And from Cimarron, New Mexico, your elk hunting coaches, Leroy Chavez
Howdy.
and Joe Gilliadu in the house here, all the way down from Vermejo Park. Joe, give us some feedback on all that snow, brother.
30 inches. 30.
Wow.
30 inches.
That's just not right.
Yeah, it's
That's
unbelievable.
feet, Joe. That ain't inches. My Lord.
Oh my goodness. And it was just pounding. And you're trying to get out there and move around and hunting that stuff. And yeah, it made for an interesting hunt. But man, I tell you what, I did a cow elk hunt with two gentlemen, and I want all y'all to hear this. The most fun that I have ever had on a rifle elk hunt. I've guided trophy elk hunters, man, with the rifle. Now, some incredible animals and, incredible hunts. But I am telling you this, the cow elk hunt, to me, with these guys, was the most fun I have ever had on a rifle elk hunt. And, I mean, it was like, man, it was so cool. And, it's something that to see the genuine happiness on these guys, and I mean, there were things that happened during that hunt. It was so hard, and you had the snow. I had a gentleman that was crawling on a stalk, belly up, man, trying to get in so we could get a shot right behind me. And I mean, I took him to the hilt, man. So it was a blast. It was so much fun. And
one thing you're going to know when you hunt with Mr. Joe, you're going to go to the nth degree to get it done, buddy. I promise.
So, Joe, if I get this right, I mean, this was the last day of the hunt, and then this big snow comes in, and now, options are limited, and you had to make a executive decision to get out there and made it happen the last hour of the hunt, huh?
Yeah, our hunter actually thought, because I mean, we tried going out in the morning and I could not see the road. Now, it's one thing when you're on a highway and you got stakes coming up, but you get out there in that country trying to go places, and it's a wide out and you're not able to see anything. You end up in a hole, you end up in a crevice. It becomes dangerous.
It's a safety issue at that point. Yeah.
So I turn and I'm like, well, and the elk are not moving and that stuff. They're all bedded down. It's coming down so hard, and we're just blowing time, really. And I was like, man, we can't do this. Let's go back. And they literally thought the hunt was over. It was last day. And, I realized there was another option, and we drove an hour and a half down to lower elevation to go to that option. And near Cimarron, actually. I went down near my own home in an area that I have never been in before, and it's right there by my own home. And And when I called and said, "Hey, get ready, we're going," they were like, "Huh?" So we drove an hour and a half, man. Imagine that on a ranch that big, you got to drive an hour and a half to get to another part of it, man. So well, and it probably was because of the snow. It was probably almost 2 hours because it took me over 2 hours to get back to Vermejo from there, trying to get back in the snow. And it was it was just really cool because, you know, I hate to give up on something, and to see that snow and everything, it was like, man, we can still do this. We go down, and we are basically in flatland country, and find an incredible herd of elk, and we get on them, and we put on 2 epic stalks, and end up making it happen there. And I mean, I tell you, I was just proud of these guys. It was way cool. It was awesome.
Resourceful Joe, man, making it happen.
Now, I want to talk about something because Luis has just finished a video that's going to be on our ElkBros channel pretty soon, in working the arrow build, correct?
Yeah. So I broke it down. It's a long video, Joe, but it's actually got 3 sections. Well, I guess you could say 4 sections. The first section is just kind of me walking people through the 12 factors from Dr. Ashby, just that enhanced penetration. So I call that section A, and then I just have timestamps on the video to where you can go to each one of the 12 factors. And then section B is the process I went through to pick my spine and my arrow and my insert weights.
Awesome.
And also has those steps. Section C is the process I use to build my arrows. So once I know what my arrow is going to look like, what I do with it, how I cut it, how I glue it, and all that stuff. And then the last section is just a little talk on conclusions and kind of show the differences between my previous setup and my newest setup.
Yeah, way cool. I think it's I'm excited. I'm excited for everybody to see that. We've had people sending in emails asking to see that. So it's on its way, man. It's way cool.
And hey, I just want to take a quick parenthesis here, and let's go back to introductions. Beto, if you're not going to be, calling me for my righteous name of the leader of the Venezuelan mafia, we're going to have some issues here because Mananos wants to be no show, and so I don't know what kind of leadership you are confusing him for, but I mean, this ain't happening. You
I'll have it fixed, duly noted, and I'll have it fixed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make that point.
I understand.
Moving right along.
All right, move us right along, dude.
Moving right along, guys. The countdown continues. This is our 93rd episode of our podcast. Only 7 away from our 100th show.
7 away from the big 100, man.
Yes, sir.
Episode. How cool is that?
It's very cool. And to our listeners, we are looking for 2 of our grinders that want to join us. The ElkBros on our 100th episode of Blue Collar Elk Hunting. If you want to join us, here's what you do.
Right. So it's simple. There's only 2 things that you need to tell us by writing us to us at info@elkbros.com. So that's info@elkbros.com. Just tell us 2 things on your email. One, first tell us about your journey this year as an elk hunter. But I believe, Joe, I mean, it doesn't have to be just this year. It could be, your journey could be several years long. I mean,
absolutely, man.
Just tell us everything that has brought you to this point as far as an elk hunter. Right, Joe?
Yeah.
And then secondly, why would you like to join us on our 100th episode?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do this?
Yeah,
man?
I mean, what's the reason why you want to do this? No, and look, it's been cool. We've received a ton of emails so far. Very interesting stories, inspiring stories, and cool journeys. And so, yeah, I mean, feel free to share with us. And I believe that it doesn't end with being selected or not for the show.
No.
That's right, guys. Man, it doesn't matter if you did or you didn't punch your tag this year, or if your hunt's still coming up. We'll be selecting 2 of the grinders out there that are giving, and we'll be giving them some gear as well from others that write in as well.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what all we get as far as the gear and how we put that out there, right?
Also, if any of you, our listeners, have a special topic that you would like us to discuss on our 100th episode, we would love to hear it. Remember, send all letters and topics to info, I-N-F-O, at elkbros.com.
Yeah, and guys, I know a lot of you follow us on Instagram and stuff, but you need to send in that email so that I can forward it to the rest of the crew. They don't see all the Instagram stuff until it's posted, so they don't see any of the direct messages most of the time unless I copy, paste, and forward stuff like that. So you'd help us out because, man, time is of value these days. Trust me.
Yeah,
I'm like a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest, man.
That's busy. Well, guys, y'all know what time it is. It's time for the ElkBros shout. If you're new to our show, just a shout out to a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week.
And
we're adding a little twist, aren't we?
Oh, heck yeah, man. This came up from Chav. Chav did this because Chav's been doing our research, and I'm up in the mountain. Chav sends me a thing, and I'm like, how do you know what cities to do? And he's like, we're getting all these letters from people that want to join us on our 100th episode. So he kind of randomly picked some of those guys so that we could do shout outs to cities or towns from some of our grinders that have been writing in to join us on our 100th episode.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Chav, man, he's always in the dark coming up with brilliant ideas, man.
That's right.
Sure. First up on this town is part of the St. Louis metropolitan area and has been in existence since 1823. A main attraction near the city of the Frenchman's Bluff, where legend has it that the Indian princess and her French lover leaped off a cliff to their death to avoid capture by the natives, in none other than Troy, Missouri, or southern part, Missouri.
Missouri. Yeah, Missouri again, man.
Absolutely, buddy.
Yep, absolutely.
Show me state showing out.
I remember you saying show me state last week, so I know that they're showing up, right?
Exactly.
Our next town, right here in New Mexico, is located 35 miles north of the Mexican border. I don't know, did you just hear my voice crack, man? I think I'm going through poverty.
Emotional.
So it's located 35 miles north of the Mexican border in New Mexico. Founded in 1881, a silver spike was driven here to commemorate the meeting of the Southern Pacific Railroad with the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe Railroads, the second transcontinental railroad in the United States. But here's the cool thing, and I've always thought this is neat, that this city is home to the world-famous duck race, which is an annual week-long festival, which, you know what they do? They race ducks.
Good deal.
That's what they do, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to be a certain kind of duck, or can you race any duck? Or
You can race any duck, man, as long as they
awesome.
can quack. You know,
Can Manano participate?
Yep.
They
I
have a
don't
race.
want to eat them all.
They have a racetrack. They hold on to their duck, and they drop them, and first one to the finish line, man.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. It's awesome, man. Only in Deming, New Mexico.
Deming. What part of the state's Deming in?
It's the southern part of our state, right on the border.
It's
with
an I-10,
Mexico.
I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Interstate
What's that?
10. I think it's on Interstate 10.
Gotcha.
Interstate 10.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, next up. This town was first settled in 1738 and was originally called Hess's Mill, after Jacob Hess, who built a grist mill on the Little Antietam Creek. Home to 8 different cave systems, a feature attraction in the area is the Crystal Rotos Caverns. Another attraction is that is nearby is the site of the famous Civil War battle, the Antietam National Battleground. And this is in none other than Kettyville, Maryland.
Is it Kettyville? I would have said Kettyville, but
Kettyville, yeah.
Kettyville, Maryland.
Kettyville, yes.
And I think that's Grotto's Cavern. I don't know because it has the E on the end of it, but Maryland all the way. That's about as much East Coast as you can get over there.
If
right?
you drop
I
off any
thought
further,
I
you're
nailed
in the
Antietam.
ocean. Any further east, you're in the drink, buddy, in
Hey,
the big pond.
you totally nailed Antietam, man. I
Yeah.
went online to listen to how they pronounced that.
Well, guess what I did? Exact same thing.
He looked at it in the phonetic spelling, Joe.
I was gonna say it, but if I wouldn't have done that, I would have been like Antietam.
So did you
Antietam.
look up Kittyville? How to
I
pronounce
did
it?
not.
Oh. So you
Slacker.
Wow,
you
wow.
looked up the
Slacker.
battleground, but you didn't
Yeah.
look up the name that you
Because
were
I thought
shouting
I had
out
that
to.
one handled, but I guess not. So,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's like B camera stuff right there.
Yeah, I know. I
Hey
know. I'm
man,
slacking,
we've
brother.
been
I'm sorry.
we've been killing you all week with the C camera stuff, man.
Oh man.
No camera. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you gave it to me.
Guys, this next city is known as the hub of Pennsylvania's Amish country and the home of the 15th president of the United States, James Buchanan, and an abolitionist, Thaddeus Stevens. One of the oldest inland towns in the United States. It was originally called Hickorytown in 1861. During the Revolutionary War, it served as the capital of the U.S. when the Continental Congress fled Philadelphia. It is home to the Conestoga Wagon and the Pennsylvania Long Rifle in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Man, hunting. I hear that over in Pennsylvania, that's where so many of those outdoor shows go on. I mean, if you really want to go find out places to go, I mean, out there in Pennsylvania is one of those places.
Yep.
I believe
Lots of hunters.
brother Brendan was in
Yes, sir.
Pennsylvania not
He
too long
is.
ago hunting some bear. So,
You didn't get any pictures, so I guess he didn't get one.
So, Chav, how do you say that wagon? Because that's that big wagon that had the points on each end, right? They got kind of.
It might be Conestoga.
Yeah, I think
Conestoga, yeah.
yeah, because I mean it's almost kind of U-shaped at the top. They they
Yeah.
kind of went up on each end. It wasn't straight across. It had
Yeah, those big frontier wagons. Yeah.
yeah, it had a definite look to it, and all the way from Pennsylvania there. And Chad, why don't you do the last one since you were slacking
Okay.
up front?
Yeah.
He had some technical
Fingers are
difficulties,
doing their own
Joe.
thing. Okay, this town sits on the shore of Bear Lake in northeast Utah and is a popular destination town, thus nicknamed the Caribbean of the Rockies. The name came about because of the beautiful blue color of the lake. It was settled in 1877 and was a Latter-day Saints branch. It's also home to world famous raspberries and raspberry shakes. It's a must stop for visitors. Another top attraction is the Paris Ice Caves in Garden City, Utah.
Utah
Utah in the house. Got some
Thank
big
y'all,
balls
man.
up in Utah.
And we didn't mention the names of the individual letters and stuff on this. You'll be hearing those later on. But all you guys, we hope you enjoyed the shout out to your town that you've sent letters in for some of you. And guys, we are looking forward to getting more of those from you guys that are listening out there. And thank you so much to all the ones that we've got. All right.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so let's get to topic. And everybody, part one from last week's podcast was, man, I thought we were going to get through it quick so we could get to some ElkBros mailbox, but it wasn't so fast. It was an incredible discussion, and what we talked about is the fact that every single one of us, I don't care who you are, you're going to have a struggle at one time or another. Elk hunting, it's just a fact. It's elk hunting, whether you punch your tag or not. We even, it's important to remember that just because you punch your tag doesn't mean that you don't have things to work on, and you're not able to become satisfied. You've got to really, take a look and evaluate and look with perspective, because, there's a lot of reasons sometimes that we can, in the end, punch a tag, but not be consistent from year to year to year to do that. And that's the goal, is to consistently do that. So the key when you face that struggle is do you make excuses, or do you take an honest look at what was missing that contributed to your struggle? And a lot of times what's missing are the elk. Right?
Yeah, no doubt, man. Hard to kill one when there ain't none.
It really is. And, I still get texts all the time from guys out there, from ElkBros out there, grinders out there, and they're telling me like, man, we've been here for 5 days, Joe, and we've seen 2 elk, So that struggle, a lot of times, it's hugely real. And I can tell you that there's so many of us and so many people out there and a lot of hunters that they prepare all through the year, and they make sure they have equipment. They make sure they've got their logistics done. They make sure they've got their buddies lined out. They make sure that, they've got clothing that's going to help them out there. They have their camping gear. They do all that stuff. And then they get there and they get feet on the ground. And it's like, where do I find the elk now? Right? It's almost like kind of doing things backwards. You just got to work on finding those things where you're short. And most of this has to do with knowledge. So tonight, in part 2, being an efficient elk hunter is what our focus is on tonight. And when we're talking about being efficient, that is something that we want to be efficient. And like Gilbert said in the beginning, efficient and consistent on that as well. And guys, when we talk about, because really I line this out to look at us as hunters a lot like other predators. And you could almost do a discussion on this, because there's so many people that take a look at hunters and they think that hunting sometimes is barbaric, and yet they look at bears and they look at different animals and they think, well,
Natural.
What's that?
And then they say that's natural.
Yeah, that it's natural. Not only natural, but they look at them and they think, well, these animals, they're cute and they're cuddly,
Yeah. Till you in the presence of one of them,
But
you figure out they can eat you.
oh well, and that's the thing is that nature, nature is
Brutal.
brutal. I mean brutal.
100, buddy.
And
But
so-
only the strong survive.
Yeah, and those predators, you have efficient and inefficient predators. And here's what when we talk about an efficient predator is quick on the kill, because it keeps them protected. It keeps them from getting injured. They are really good at putting something down. I'll tell you.
I think the only inefficient predator that survives is the humans.
The inefficient. Oh, that
yeah,
survives.
we can be real inefficient and still
I
survive.
mean, the inefficient predators in the wild, they don't survive.
Yeah.
No, well, and let me go back on that. A bear is a very inefficient killer.
Okay.
Okay, in other words, they are not quick with their kill. That's why you'll see animals that'll try to get, like for example, when a grizzly takes down an elk, it'll get on the back side of that elk and latch its teeth into the spine so that that elk is not able to get at him with the horns, right?
Okay.
And efficient.
They wear them down, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Oh, okay.
and basically will eat an animal alive.
Yeah,
that's
no
what,
doubt.
That's what I mean by an inefficient killer.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and
there's
a rattlesnake is a very efficient predator.
very efficient.
They
Absolutely.
strike one time, sit back, and don't have to get trampled to death. They just wait for the animal to die. They walk over there and suck him up, and nothing's harmed. you know?
Totally, really efficient. And not only are they efficient, but they eat the whole critter.
Exactly. And nothing goes to waste.
Nothing goes to
Nothing
waste, man.
waste.
And,
Yeah,
and that's
I agree.
And that's why the comparison that we're looking at as efficient and inefficient hunters is not so much that you are making the kill, it's also on the fact that you're not wounding the animal, and
That makes sense. That makes sense. I
So-
follow you now.
So I was taking what you were saying, Luis, there is that really humans, when it comes to the brutality of nature, if we are efficient, we make one of the cleanest and quickest and most responsible kills there are.
No doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
Right.
So for
And being efficient takes practice.
absolutely.
It takes securing the skills to be able to manage the situation, get yourself in position, and finish. And when you finish the ethical way to finish, it's very efficient. But it can be done in reverse and be very inefficient, and where we look
So
bad in the public's eyes.
oh yeah. But see, that's what that's one of the points I'm trying to make, because Luis has actually brought up two ways that you can be efficient.
Right.
Number one, you can be efficient in the kill, as far as being quick with the kill,
Yeah.
right? Or you can be efficient in making a kill. All right, so not only, it's two different things. I can make a kill, but that could be a long, slow death.
No
Kind
doubt.
of like some of these inefficient predators do, right? Our goal as hunters is to be efficient elk hunters, to be able to take one every year, but as well to put that animal down as quickly and as humanely and ethically as possible.
Yep.
And because I mentioned this on a podcast, that one of the reasons, one of the goals, and one of the things that was important to me when we started wanting to educate people is because I would, in the woods, come across people many, many times and ask them, and look, I don't want this to be hunter bashing, but I want this to be educational, right? I mean, we're all hunters, and all of us at one time are going to wound an animal. But our goal is to help people to make some better decisions and to train better and to do things that are going to make them more efficient in two ways, right? But I would bump into people and I'd say, have you had any luck today? And they said, well, I stuck one this morning. And basically in that conversation, I find out, well, they saw the animal, not that they had a good angle, not that they had a good shot. They saw the rear end, they saw whatever, and they put an arrow in it. And that to me is something that we should never do. We should always hunt with a purpose and never take a shot unless we know that that's a killing shot. Now, can crap go south? We know that. We've talked about it, right? No matter what, we're hunting an animal that's trying to survive. And crap can happen no matter how hard we work at it. It's hunting. And it's a life and death situation, and things don't always go our way. I mean, we can work our butt off. We can do everything right and have things go wrong. Yep. But if you are an efficient hunter, then you are working at getting that job done quickly. You're working at getting that harvest consistently, and you're working at doing it with deadly accuracy. Okay? So,
and I think to your point, Joe, in our journeys as hunters, in our journeys as elk hunters, I mean, we owe it to ourselves as hunters, and we owe it to the animals that we're hunting to ensure that we continue to acquire knowledge and gain experience to become better and to become more efficient. And I think you're probably going to be touching on all these points, but that knowledge getting acquired, it's not only the knowledge of, I mean, there are so many departments of different knowledges that you need to acquire in order to kind of, have the complete suite of knowledge and understanding. I mean, you can just break it down into the understanding the animal, understanding the hunt, survival, equipment, as there's just so many things that as a hunter, like you mentioned, you have to have that thirst to get better into each one of those segments or the
knowledge is key. Knowledge is key.
100%.
Because how many of his hunters, we get a gun at a young age and we become really, really great as far as being able to look and shoot where we want to shoot. We understand our weapon. But then what if you don't know the anatomy of the animal that you're hunting? You know, what are you setting yourself up for? What are you setting that animal up for? Right?
Oh, agreed.
Yeah. Not only the anatomy of the animal, it's also the type of gun that you're using. Where are you using that gun? Altitude, and go ahead, Beto. I'm sure you got
man, and you know, using the right gun for the equipment, the right projectile for the animal. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into gun hunting and our bow hunting. You know, our setups that we have. I mean, Luis has dove into some really technical things with arrow and weight forward and broadhead setup and all of those things, man, to make him more efficient at what he does. And you know, and it's awesome. You know, I think the stuff we've learned going over the years, you know, this will be my 11th elk season coming up.
Bro, I think it's your 12th, isn't it? Or is it the 11th?
Yeah, my bad. It is the 12th. I'm losing a little. Man, I'm trying to slow it down, Joe. It will be my 12th elk season. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I wished I had, you know, I wish I could have started this at a much earlier age. However, I don't know that I would have been as polished as we become as once we get a little older and value that polish, right? I mean, I think when we're younger, we really kind of go through life with blinders on, and we go 90 miles an hour with our hair on fire, and we're like, we'll knock them all down, let God sort them out, you know. We have that little bit of mentality, and at least I did when I was that young. But boy, when I started elk hunting, I figured out real quick, especially with a bow, that you needed to be attention to details, you know.
Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp, the first in a series of online courses from our Blue Collar Elk Academy. Our Base Camp Training Camp allows me to use my coaching style and share almost 40 years of elk hunting experiences successfully hunting elk on public lands, as well as over 20 years guiding hunters of all ages and experience levels. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets. Our camp will prepare you specifically from that final moment most in your control, those final minutes or seconds the elk is in front of you, backwards through each step and level, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. Because y'all, you've already been there. You know what it looks like. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And Base Camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
Yeah. And you hit it on the head, Joe. You got to know that animal and its capabilities and its anatomy is totally different than what we do here in the South and in the eastern part of the U.S. where we're hunting deer-sized animals. And when you step up to, you know, a quarter horse or a Clydesdale horse with big, huge antlers, and they make these god awful, like Tyrannosaurus Rex voices, they freak you out, man. I ain't lying. I mean, you get freaked out every time.
Sometimes they sound like mountain lions.
It's crazy what
I'm going to speak to that power that you were just talking about. But Chad, were you going to say something a second ago?
Oh, I was just going to kind of allude to what Gilbert was talking about too, and we've mentioned it many times, is that podcast on shot placement is one of the better ones around. And I know a lot of people, like you said, they'll shoot at the body, not necessarily aiming at a certain spot. And I think that podcast really, is really a valuable piece of information that a lot of people can use.
That thing is so important to me, Joe. And it happened to me about 6 years ago, when my daughter killed an elk, and I saw how fast it was dispatched. I'm going to up with that, and I'm going to shoot my next animal, and I shoot every animal there. And I'm telling you, it kills them so fast you won't believe it. So for me, when the moment of truth arises, I'm just hunting that spot, right? Yeah. And when my pen gets to that spot, it's aim small, miss small, let it go. And I'm telling you, if it hits it in a circle like that, it's lights out. I mean, quick too.
And not to wanting to make a plug out of the Academy, but the Academy also captures this shot placement and the different angles, and it's pretty neat because it's got the elk in different positions, and it's got an interactive buttons to where you can see a picture of an elk and kind of put your mouse where you think the shot should go, and it flips over and it tells you where it should be. And so I mean, stuff like that is just extremely helpful, especially for new hunters understanding the anatomy of the animal.
Yeah, and you do want a quick kill. And Joe was visiting with me earlier this morning, telling me about his hunters that he had this weekend, and both of them were hard shots, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And yet the shots that Gilbert that I saw Gilbert take last year, and Manano and Luis, I think they all traveled even a shorter distance before they died.
Yeah.
In the hard shots.
And I'm gonna speak to that because all right. We talk about, and I talk about shot placement, and it's real critical that, guys, you understand angles as well, and we can get back to that. But I really, when it comes to me guiding an archery hunter and guiding a rifle hunter, I kind of go two different ways with that, because we want that shot placement where Gilbert's exactly talking about. We're doing that mid-body 3 inches back, and we're taking out both lungs, and we're putting that animal down fast. With my rifle hunters, though, I want that lower third, and I want that heart shot. And the reason I want that is, yes, that animal... I saw a heart shot elk 3 days ago. I showed these guys here a photo of that. On the front side, that hole on the front side is about the size of a silver dollar, if not a little bit bigger, where it hits that heart. On the back side, the heart is obliterated.
Yes.
Literally obliterated. Now, with that happening, with that set, that elk ran 50 yards one way, turned around and ran 50 yards another way. In other words, that animal ran over 100 yards with an obliterated heart.
Unbelievable.
Which is unbelievable, and it speaks to the power of them. However, I still tell my rifle hunters to hit there, because I know that that animal is going to go down in a certain amount of distance, and with the rifle, it can be tough at times to find blood, and especially in that first 100 yards, right? Yeah. So I like the lower third, because with the lower third, again, if you're low, it's a clean miss. If you're up, you're in the boiler. And if you're right on the money, you're going to be able to tell the way that animal humps up, because you will literally see, man, you'll see that hump and that head go down, man, when you hit that, and they go on the death run. I mean, if they can do that. Now, I've also seen an elk hit like that take 2 steps and fall over. So it just depends on the reaction. And I don't know, maybe I can say that the female are a lot tougher than the males.
They're tough, man.
Oh, man.
Super resilient.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watched my son shoot one with the late Carl Gamage at 184 yards was the first shot he made with the 7 mag. And man, he hit her just, I mean, you couldn't have hit her any perfect. Boom. And
Yeah.
she took it like a man, brother. I mean, just, it just stood there. And Carl looked at Logan. He goes, "We better reload." He goes, he gets his binoculars up and he goes, "Oh, you got her good. I see the blood coming out of her." He said, "Just wait right there." And then all of a sudden, the elk just went, thump.
Boom.
I mean,
Over.
right over. But she took it like it was nobody's business, man. Just
Wow.
all I saw in my binoculars was like just a little boom. That was it, you know. She took it good. And it was a long shot for a little man to make. And he put it right in the pocket, blowed her heart up. And, you know, it was no tracking job needed. We went right to her. So,
Yeah.
I'm with you, Joe. I like the lower third with the rifle. Like you said, a lot of times if we're low, it's a clean miss. No harm, no foul. If we're a little high, we're going to get all the good pump station.
Yeah.
And so,
And
you know,
and
ain't
the
gonna break
angles
it down.
change. The angle, I mean, you have so many more angles with the rifle than you do
Yeah.
with the bow.
Yeah.
I can, but you have to understand those angles, man.
100%.
And yeah, I mean, there's so many people that shoot targets, and they shoot a 3D target, and on a 3D, especially if you shoot 3D hunting, they're going to have like your 12 ring, your 10 ring, and all that stuff, and they get so used to aiming for that, and none of those, when you shoot 3D, account for angles.
Angle.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
you're always
right.
trying to hit it in that same spot. So
For me, it's
people,
about the off leg, Joe. I'm always going to
Yeah.
bring my sight up that off leg, and where it gets to the middle there, that's when we'll let it rip, you know.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's the right angle 90% of the time is where that off leg is. Right up the
absolutely.
back side of that off leg when it gets to the center.
You always look, if I have an elk that's front of me and I look at those front legs, I see both legs just like that. That means I've got a perfect frontal. If I'm seeing a short gap between there, I've got a quartering one way or the other, depending on how they're going.
Quartering
If
too,
I've
yeah.
got both legs together, I have me a broadside. Those legs, those front legs, are key to angle on that animal.
And the position of the front leg too, whether it's back or whether it's forward.
Right.
Traditionally, you want to get that leg forward because then it clears that clavicle and you
If that last rib though is right on the line with that, back leg or off leg,
yeah.
that's a no shot at that point. You're quartering way too much.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree.
If quartering away.
Yeah, because your margin, I mean, your error margin,
Minuscule.
it really increases right there for what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get those different angles like that, for the bow, you really have to know what you're doing and consider that.
Well, and that's all about, again, it's all about being efficient, Joe. It's all about putting your time in. Down here in the South, we get to hunt quite a bit, and we hunt a lot of pigs and we hunt a lot of deer and things like that. So we really are mindful of those kind. We can practice a whole lot, and if guys aren't doing that, that just makes for an inefficient opportunity when you go out west. Guys, you spent all this money. Okay, you bought your tags, you bought all the gas, food, cold beverages that you like to drink, and everything else, and you get up there in the mountains and you're not ready, and then this goes wrong because you hadn't put the time in understanding the animal that you hunt.
And you can put a lot of time in some areas. I mean, you could have all your calling down. You could have your shooting way, you could have all that down, and there's some things, other areas that you might be weak in. It's just like when we coach. If we go and we play a basketball team that all they have is an inside game, well, we can figure, then we're going to beat that because they're going to have weak areas. If all they can do is shoot 3-point shots, well, we can beat that because they're going to have weak areas. And if you go out there as a one-trick pony and you have 2 strengths out of all these areas to be an efficient hunter, then you are not consistently and efficiently going to harvest that animal. And guys, what we're talking about here, and we didn't start it out, but this is, if you were to ask us, well, guys, bros, what does it take to be an efficient elk hunter? these are the things we're now giving you. And Luis started out exactly right, man, is number one, the thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, what he said is bingo straight. And I was talking with the Nata Grande boys just last night, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Nata Grande, but they are another New Mexico podcast, and it's Rodney Wood and Kyle Jackson, some guys that I know very well. And Kyle has game and fish background. Rodney's been hunting forever, and it's a good one to learn. They talk about a lot of different things, and they talk about all kinds of hunting. So check that out. But I was just talking with them last night, and one of the things that I was talking about is how learning the knowledge that we need, that thirst. What Luis just did with that hour of doing his video on his arrow build, that's been taking hours and hours to do that. Well, some people like myself don't want to do that, right? But there's so many things that if you go in, it's not, I don't know, like I heard somebody say it's not the sexy, it's not, you don't get immediate feedback, it's not the cool thing. Like if I get a new pair of camo that other guys recognize, they're like, oh, cool camo, or if I'm shooting my bow, I get immediate feedback if I hit that bullseye, right? That's feedback. But what if I'm practicing my call? I'm irritating my wife, I'm irritating my kid, I'm irritating my neighbors, dogs are howling. If you're in Luis's case, the cats came around his house for I don't know how long, right?
Called every cat in Katy, Texas.
Plus, and so the first thing that you do is, like, if you have one gag reflex, ask Chav. If you have one gag reflex, you're like, oh, I'm not doing this.
That's the same way with Brendan. Brendan was like, oh, man, I can't hardly go with this thing. And then he started when we were out there elk hunting. I said, yeah, put it up. You need more practice.
But I can
keep me when I see you.
Even if I can't use that, well, I can go grab one of them reed calls, or I can still go out in the woods with my bow and I can have an encounter, right? So what you do is we work at the things we're good at, and we keep holes in our game, right? Instead of working at the things that we're not so good at.
Right. And Joe, look, it's funny because we talk about our journeys, right? And I look back at my journey, and that very first trip I went out there with you guys, I thought I had a handle on things. I was like, you know what? I know how to shoot my bow. I got a decent setup. I've shot at pigs before. I kind of shot a few animals and hunted in public land. I think I got a handle on things. And boy, talk about realizing quickly that I didn't. And and that's the thing. See, the next year I try to fill up the gaps that I realized I had on the first year.
Right.
Then when I got there next year, I realized that, oh, you know what? Now that I have filled up these gaps, now I've realized that I got way more gaps on this side too.
Right.
So year after year is the process of, what were my gaps last year? And dang it, what I need to work on in order to kind of try to fill those gaps. And, if you don't have that drive for filling those gaps and that thirst, like you're saying, for knowledge and just kind of learning, and look, I still I got so many gaps, man. It's just unbelievable. But you don't progress as a hunter. And you're not going to get any different results.
You closing them quickly. I've gotten to watch your whole elk hunting career, and you closing them quickly. You put the work in. You working extremely hard in the physical part, the mental part, and I think a lot of guys don't understand what we talk about the mental part, because look, just having your ass whooped every day on that mountain's physical, but it will get in your mental psyche really quick because you can't go, and it's because of your physical and guys like me are just stubborn. I can't go, but I'm going anyway. If I fall out, they'll have to drag my ass up that mountain. But at the end of the day, I have so much confidence in my ability to close. If you can get me within 80 yards of that animal, he's in very bad trouble. So that's where I'm efficient, right? Is in that close and being able to stalk in. And I feel like Chev and I've always said, if we feel like we see an animal, we feel like we can get in on him and kill him, right?
But Beto, you have touched on something so important when you're talking about the mental part, because a lot of people normally focuses on, like we're talking about, right? The behavior of the animal, the ability to shoot your weapon, understanding your weapon, speaking the language, all these different knowledges. But man, that is a deal breaker. Not having the right mindset, it can just ruin your hunt.
For sure.
And look, it's to me, that's still a work in progress. That's something I continue to struggle with, and
from getting out of bed in the cold in the morning.
Yeah, and then also emotions, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Violacus and all
yeah.
that stuff. It's just that's why I find this to be such a beautiful, I don't know. I don't want to call it a sport because I don't consider it to be a sport. Let's call it a way of life.
Yeah.
I find it such a beautiful way of life. It's just because it makes you grow as a human being, and it teaches you about yourself, and the kind of person you are and the kind of person you want to be. And so it really reveals all the gaps that you have in your core.
So Joe, you being a teacher, I mean, I'm sure one of the things that you always have your students do is do their homework, right, Joe?
Oh, absolutely, man. And that's a huge issue with a lot of these guys is that, they're so excited to get there. And then once they get there, they realize that they really haven't done their homework for the area, or they haven't done their homework and they've chosen an area that's going to put them in a tough situation, and all those other things that he's talking about, the mental aspect of it. Look, if you understand these different areas to become a more efficient elk hunter and you work in those areas, your mental strength is going to grow just from what you have in your background to lean on, because you know what to believe in and you know that you have choices, you have options, and where to go with those. Because, I'm out with Steven, one of my ex-student athletes, just a week ago. And I'm telling you, first 3 days of that hunt, I struggled, man, because, he's calling me. He's like, gee, I drew for this area, and can you come help out? And I'm like, I've never been in the area. I know elk, right? But I've never been there. So my homework, man, I had to jump on and start looking at things. Well, I start looking, but you don't know the current situation of the area at this time. I find the area that I think is just going to be a slammer. And we go up there only to find out that area was so dry and overgrazed between the cattle lease that was on it during the year, the elk and animals that have been on that, because they hit that first thing up there because everything else was so dry. I mean, it was chewed down to the friggin' dirt and pulled. There was no water up there where there had always been water. So, that knowledge factor. Now, a lot of people would have gone, I'm screwed, but I have the background to know that, all right, so they're not here, so I've got to work now and find out where they are and use my skill set. So I'm telling guys, you got to do your homework, get to know the area, do your recon, and talk to ranchers, talk to locals, talk to biologists, rangers, talk to other hunters, talk to cowboys that work the area, talk to road workers. Man, on the ranch that I work on, I'm going to give a shout out to Dave Weinbark. And Dave is a good friend of mine. I coached his daughter years ago. And Dave does all the road maintenance on the ranch. Let me tell you who knows where those animals are. Yeah, man. I mean, dude, if you got somebody that does DOT during a certain time of year when it's snowing, and Department of Transportation, give a yell and ask them, hey, anybody that runs y'all's blades out there regularly or doing this, do you think they'd mind if I give them a call that are from this area? I mean, think about these different ways of getting information. Commuters, people that go back and forth from one place. You're in a restaurant and you find out somebody drives an hour from another location through an area that you're hunting. Man, I guarantee you. Hey, chap, so when we go from here to Raton, can you name the places that the elk are crossing that highway?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know about 3 or 4 places where you know they're going to be there. So you hunt the area that's adjacent to those places.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
You were telling us about a place right after a bridge, I think by Springer,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that they're always there at. And sure enough,
Yeah.
man, as we were driving back, we just happened to look to the right after going through that bridge, and they were there where
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Yeah.
a big herd of them.
There are so many ways beyond biologists and beyond rangers and beyond game wardens to get information. And, I've even mentioned if you're in a restaurant or you're in a grocery store and, somebody sees you camouflage and say you're out hunting, as soon as somebody asks you that, they have opened the door because they want to engage in a conversation. And I guarantee you can get at least one nugget, because when people ask you that, they're usually local from the area and they want to let you know how much they know about hunting in their area.
Yeah, people like to talk about themselves, Joe.
Yes,
Just ask me.
absolutely. Take advantage of that, man, if
Yeah.
they're willing to give it. So, you can find out top areas. You can talk about areas that are overlooked, honey holes, current conditions. Find out what the current conditions are, man. I mean, I had people that said their area was closed due to fire, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that had probably been a really hard area to hunt that year anyway. I mean, if it was that dry to torch up like that, it could have been a tough area. You can find out about herd sizes, about annual movement. You can go to Colorado Division of Wildlife, and you can actually get migration routes and put them on your Onyx or base map. They're KBM maps that you can load on that show their summer to winter routes. I mean, how huge is that information? Problem areas. Call Game and Fish and find out which areas have to have the most deprivation hunts. And generally, deprivation is going to happen either in winter for you rifle hunters out there, either in winter or right before winter. When guys are growing crops out there before they take them, if it's hay or grass or anything like that, those elk will hit those areas. So, where the elk problems are and why they are there, and find out what their annual food sources are. Where they're liking to be in those areas. So do your homework, man. When we scout, we never look for elk.
That's right. We look for elk sign
And food sources.
Yeah,
and food sources.
food, water.
We know they're slaves to their bellies.
Absolutely. This year, water sources are gold.
I bet.
It's been so dry.
Been so dry. Thank goodness now we just got that 30 inches. That's going to help some, as far as we go. And so what I'm going to do is we're still going to be talking about these areas, but guys, what does it take to be an efficient elk hunter? Here's the areas, and we're going to talk about them more. Knowledge, doing your homework, understanding an elk's needs at the time of year that you're hunting, understanding elk behavior, being able to speak the language, knowing shot placement and anatomy, being equipped correctly, and be deadly with your weapon under all actual hunting conditions. Don't just be that rock star in your backyard, all right? Put yourself in uncomfortable positions in the type of stuff you hunt in wind, drizzle, whatever it is. Have patience, persistence, and determination. And like Luis mentioned before, your mental and your physical conditioning is critical, but these areas are going to help you. Now, they're not these areas, some of this will actually help you with physical conditioning. I get in shape just from going out to find out elk activity and stuff all the time.
Right.
Hiking the hills, right?
I would also add to some of this. Man, I'm sorry, I kind of lost train. I have it in my mind. It'll come back to me, and I'll tell you.
You're
Having
over
one of them
40, man.
senior moments, son. Let me tell you now. That you make
Man,
fun
that
of
was
me all the
crazy. I was like,
time,
man, I
boy.
had this clear picture of what I was gonna say, and all of a sudden,
Dang, man.
You know what's so funny is, man, he's always
We
calling
need to
Joe
get
the old man.
Camera B
Oh,
up for
God.
him, man.
He's always calling Joe the old man, and this dude's like got memory loss all of a sudden, man.
Straight up
Man,
lost
I
train
just
of
completely
thought.
blanked out. So,
Oh,
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
get another drink, Luis. It's okay.
Doggone, I might need that. Yeah.
And the last category that and we'll probably know is
I remembered.
Oh, what?
Woodsmanship.
What?
Woodsmanship.
Woodsmanship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what's
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he said something in chips.
Fish and chip. Oh, no, that's not it.
Fish and
Fish
chip. That's
and
what Scottish
chips.
would say is like, yeah.
No, woodsmanship's a big deal, man. And I've been fortunate to be able to hunt since I could carry a dadgum squirrel, from my grandfather. So the woodsmanship that he taught me was invaluable, and understanding how to use cover for your, for your approach on an animal, and how do you get the sunlight behind you. I mean, there's just so much in being able to read the woods and the sign out there. And then,
And if somebody can camouflage behind a tree,
yeah,
that's
man,
Beto.
y'all got to
pictures
see
of
that. It's coming to you pretty quick. I don't know where it's at, but I know it's going to be somewhere for everybody to see. So yeah, when you get a little old tree about that big around, it can hide me back here in the Vicru camo, boy. Whew, yeah.
Invisible.
Invincible.
And
right?
you know,
Invisible.
and it's funny because you mentioned that, and I've left off totally the obvious, and it's because it's just so ingrained to me. I don't think about telling it, and that's understanding how to use the wind and thermals.
Oh man, big.
I mean, it's huge.
You won't see no elk if you can't do it. I promise you. They'll be there for sure. They'll be there, but you won't ever see them. Unless you're using it right.
And I take it for granted. I mean, it's just something that is so ingrained in me that it's part of my normal thinking in my woodsmanship when I'm out there.
Yeah.
Right.
2 times this year, Brendan stopped me and was like, man, dude, we got the wind right at our back. I said, yeah, but that's not what I want to go. Where I want to go is go down and turn back into the wind, but we got to go this way to
Absolutely.
do that. I said, listen, we're going to have to sacrifice a little bit to get some, but there are a lot of things that you do that you're going to have to sacrifice in. I said, however, Brendan, we had the wind at our back, but I want you to see something. The thermals are coming up as the day's coming. Watch this. I hit the snuffer and it starts going the other way. And he goes, how did you know that? I said, well, for number one is the day heats up, that stuff's going to move, so it's just about understanding that. And if you hadn't put your time in the woods, understand the thermals and understand the wind, and there is a prevailing wind in every place that you hunt.
Sure. That'll bend thermals.
You bet. And a lot of areas too will create a funnel of wind that comes through there as well. Just a natural funnel where
if you're in a
tends
canyon,
to blow.
yeah, right.
Yeah. So I mean, guys, it's just about putting the time in the woods for us. And Luis is 100% right. Woodsmanship is huge. And for you guys that are first timers out there, a lot of times y'all don't have that, right? So if we can help you with some of that stuff, take notes and when you're out there, check all that stuff out.
And, a lot of people make a mistake in thinking that thermals, they hear that as the air warms up, thermals are going up. As the air cools, they're going down. But what they don't understand is thermals are a lot like the rut.
Yeah.
In that in different locations, it can be different, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And
that's why you carry your little snuffer bottle with you. And,
yep.
A lot of guys now are putting feathers on their bows with a little piece of thread, and, they can see that. But for me, it's the talcum powder that does the trick. So we carry a bunch of it.
And I'm going to tell you that all talcum powders are not built equally either.
That's right.
I mean, there's some of them, man. I mean, you're spray. It's hard to see that thing. It's like looking at a daggum ghost, man. Get something that you can see when it.
Right.
When it
But
and don't get the ones that smell like baby.
That's Manano. Manano got baby powder in his, man. He's got the Brute by Fabergé powder. Man. I ain't lying.
And if you don't have one with you, I mean, people see me all the. I don't know if you remember Gladiator when he bends down and he puts that dirt in his hand and he kind of does like that. I mean, the dust
like an
from the.
hourglass.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can. There's a lot of
And
things.
where, when we got the 3 inches of snow, Joe, we could tell real quick which way the wind was going, man, with our own breath,
Yeah, yeah.
Like you guys can walk outside right now, I imagine, and put your finger out and make a hole. It's that
Well,
cold.
that's why when we were going up the hill, bro, I would just turn around and watch you breathe, and I could tell which way the wind was going.
Heck yeah, because I had plenty of it coming out, boy.
Beto, the wind checker.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What are you looking at? I'm looking at my wind checker.
The out of breath wind checker.
Yeah. Stop, Joe! You're gonna freaking kill me, man.
Another thing that I talked to those guys about last night, when we were talking about success, and when I think back at the things because really, honestly, guys, remember, to be consistently efficient as an elk hunter and a consistently efficient elk hunter, you have to, how do I want to say this? I can speak the language, right? And why is that important? Because you have to consistently be able to create opportunities.
Yeah.
Because elk hunting, you're going to blow a lot of opportunities, man.
Especially
so the more opportunities you're able to create and that your encounters you're able to have, your odds go up and being able to finish that, So I think being able to speak the language, to me, has been huge. Because, I mean, Chav, you can remember times, I mean, it wasn't even, we would go in October, we would go in the summer, and we'd call an elk. We'd cow call, right?
Right.
And we'd see elk all the time. It wasn't just that we were talking to elk only during the rut. And a lot of people, they're like, well, is calling effective? Well, it depends on just what you're trying to do. Cows are always going to be, especially after the rut, man. I think they become more conversational. Once those bulls get up there and those lead cows are taking care of everything, I mean, I hear them all the time being very social.
all the time.
Yep, absolutely. So, and understanding the situations of that language and understanding what's natural when they're doing that in certain positions, I think is really huge. And
another shameless plug for our academy, man.
Let me give a shameless
man.
look.
It
Chris
tells
Rowe,
you exactly what to do.
Chris Rowe, Paul Medell, the elk nut.
Yep.
Corey Jacobson is a world championship caller.
You bet.
There's so many good people out there. Chappelle is a real great one to listen to. Michael Batiste. If you've never listened to anything from Michael Batiste, man, he is phenomenal. And Michael's a great guy, and he really pays attention to the different things and reactions from elk. And if you haven't heard any of these names, man, go out there and look them up. And these are guys that make a living at being successful elk hunters. They're very efficient. And they're efficient in two ways. They consistently harvest animals, and, man, they put them down, right? So those are guys that you want to follow. And, I think another thing that's really helped me is I don't know how patient I am. I'm pretty much no, Gilbert.
That don't go in elk hunting with you, brother.
Yeah.
No, I have seen you be patient at times, especially during the middle of the close of the deal, right?
Right.
You are patient, but getting to the close, no. But like I said, when it comes time for Joe to be patient, he's an assassin. So he waits his time out, right? But getting there, man, you can blow up 10 opportunities before you get to the close.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of notorious for that. But
for sure. Hey, man, I love it. I dig it. I'm the same way.
But I think I follow up that with that determination and persistence, man.
Man. Like a rat on a Cheeto, bro. I mean, no doubt.
And I think that's huge, man. I think a lot of people, and understand something, when we talk about this gut check and when we talk about the struggles that you're going to have hunting elk, is I can tell you, you can go 4 days, 5 days, and not have an encounter. Hours and hours and hours hiking, sleepless nights, hungry. You can have all this that can really wear at you, and then the one moment that you slip and you lose focus, you're going to come face to face with an elk. And are you going to be ready for it? Because it only takes a minute for everything to change.
Yep.
It can take
just a moment.
100 yards up and 100 yards over a ridge. You know?
Unbelievable difference.
Yeah, around each turn, and it never fails that you're going, and after a while you start daydreaming, you start having conversation, you start eating, come around a turn, and you're face to face with a herd.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. That's how it happens. Or you bump into some other hunters, and you're like, oh man, I bumped into these guys, man, there ain't gonna be no elk in the area, and you just start tromping off, and then all of a sudden, boom, there they are, right in front of you. And ain't 10 minutes hadn't gone by.
Yeah.
We've had that happen, Joe. It's part of it.
Yeah.
And I think being determined to just not give up. You're in the area that's got some elk. That's a huge deal. And then just living for it, Joe. You talk about the guys that you ride the river with. I mean, we live to do this. It says it in our opening line of, blue collar elk hunting, man. We live to hunt elk, and it
Absolutely.
is no doubt. I mean, it is one of the most favorite things I do. I wish, like I said, I had, 10 times more time to do it. But I live for those 7 to 10 days where I can get up there in those hills and go match wits with the best athletes in the world.
And let me tell you something about that, is that yesterday I hunted in an area that when I drove around, dude, there's hardly a blade of grass out there, I mean, high. I mean, it's a prairie. It's freaking flat. There's no trees. I mean, when you talk about where you expect to see elk, and I'm driving through this where I can see miles, man, and you're like, this is the last place I figure I'm gonna find a herd of elk. And there's so many little dips and rises.
Oh yeah.
And I came over, and a friggin' herd of 300 head appeared out in this flatland. And it's like
heaven.
And Moses cast them down. Yeah.
Well, that brings up another important point, is it's not as flat as it seemed. So what did you use to your advantage to get to them?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I know, but you tell us.
Yeah, so I took guys, let me tell you where base maps comes in handy, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw I showed you a photograph of the tracks of this herd going through the snow. It was literally 50 yards wide, and I could see that from a half mile away, and I could see where it was going over these little rises. I look at my base map, and I flipped it to topography, and I could see where they were going into. I mean, it's not a giant drop, but it was a depression. And then I was able to see a road that was on a level with that, with a higher level between it. So I drove to that area, and I got out, and it did not take much, because that elevation doesn't change a ton. And I came up, and I'm trying to look over it as I'm rising up, and I look, and I don't see anything. I'm like, God, where did they go? And I look to my right, they're only 400 yards away from me in a little depression. I mean, and the depression, the way it went from my level, I saw maybe 30 out of the 300, right?
Yeah.
So I go back and I get my hunter, and because there was a 2-track road going towards them, you know how 2 tracks will kind of erode into the ground level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with a little bit of a rise and with that little raise on that road in this snow country, I got my hunter, and he got right behind me. I took his rifle to make sure I had it in front, and we started on our hands and knees crawling to a point where I could barely see the top of those animals. And then, because of the wear in the two track, only the animals in front of us had a chance of seeing us. The ones on the sides, we could see a little bit of ears and backs and stuff, but they couldn't see us. We crawled on our hands and knees for 150 yards. Then, once we got to that point, I was so proud of this guy, man. I mean, I dropped down to belly crawl, and we started belly crawling 50 yards to get into position, and doing it where basically we're starting to see the animals more in front of us, and we're able to get into a sitting position. You talk about patience. We waited there for 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Because we were able to sit. And now this is in snow and freezing daggum cold. Now we're wet too because we've been crawling through it. And I managed to get him in a sitting position in there. And now we're just like anything else out there, you know, because we're not moving. And we stayed with that herd. 30-some minutes later, they all got up, they were bedded, they started getting up and started milling around and then coming straight at us. And what was originally a 300-yard shot became a 126-yard shot on a cow to the side of us. It was epic, man. That's and then awesome. After we shoot, all the elk are like looking at, like, you know, like, what just happened? Yeah. You know, they're looking around like that because there's no way out in this flatland something could be shooting at us. You know?
Exactly. How could something get in on us out here? We're way out here in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, we had the wind.
Here's a picture of that, guys. I don't know if they can actually see it, but
that's the track. Look at that.
That's the track right
that's
there.
That's 50 yards wide of that, right?
Unbelievable.
So yeah, it was crazy. And
cool.
You know, and then we got to see 300 head all get up and start, you know, just disappearing over hill to hill to hill.
Wow.
So it was,
Joe, you said something very important.
It was awesome. That's awesome.
The end result.
You said something very important there that kind of struck a nerve with me here. And you said you grabbed the rifle because you wanted to make sure that rifle, as you guys were crawling, changing the conditions in which somebody carries a rifle, could have potentially, you know, cause an accident. So I think one of the things, as far as if we go back to the things that, you know, our thirst for knowledge should also include just kind of the safety precautions that we all have to take into consideration all the time. So that's what you just said. Is just like, man, that's absolutely right. I mean, something can go wrong so easily. Crawling with somebody with a rifle behind you. Same with, you know, arrows. The same with, you know, broadheads. Just going up and down a tree stand, any situation. So be mindful of that.
And I knew before I handed it back to him to check the front of his scope to see if there was any obstruction, to check the back of any obstructions, because these are things that I've seen go wrong in the past, you know. So, I mean, it was really epic, and I was so proud of him. Cool. And at his age, because the gentleman was he was your age, Chav. He was 68, and awesome. You know, when we got done, I think the cool thing was, to him, he had an incredible memory, and he said, you know, at my age, I thought me doing what I just did was something that was gone forever.
Happen. Yeah.
And, you know, it brought something special into his life, and that's golden. I mean, that
you bet, man.
So it's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. So, guys, you've heard about our areas that we talked about, efficiency, what it takes. If any of those bring up questions, or you want to hear, and we've talked about a lot of this stuff more in detail on our podcast, but at any time you have questions, you want to hear more detail, hey, you're going to hear a lot anyway from us. Just throw it out there and we'll do it. So let's go to ElkBros mailbox.
That's right.
Sounds good, Joe.
First up on the ElkBros mailbox, we got Mr. Jonathan Bruce. We covered some of his questions last podcast, but he was full of questions, and we got a couple more from him. And thank you for sending us all your questions. Mr. Jonathan Bruce is from Eugene, Oregon, and his question today, one of his questions is, how should a hunter use and interpret game cams? What are they actually telling the hunter? How can they be best used before hunting season and during hunting season?
Well, you guys use them for deer.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
would use them so for me, Mr. Jonathan, I would use them for either travel corridors, seeing how often they use those travel corridors, and especially over wallers and water sources. I mean, you know how frequently bulls and cows are frequenting those places. And the reason why I know this is because my late friend Carl Gamage used to use them as well. And he would know what bulls were in the area, and he would know, the amount of cows that were in the area too. Now, a lot of that changes once season starts and pressure gets to them, but at least you have an idea of what kind of bulls you have in the area, and if they're using said wallows and said watering stations.
Yeah, I don't own a game cam. I've never used one. I know a lot of people that have shown me pictures of bulls, and I don't have any friends that have ever killed a bull that they've had on their game cam in the area that they did that. Now I know Carl has, we've taken bulls on his place that he had on a game cam someplace on the ranch, but it wasn't necessarily that area.
Yeah, and the way I see it, Joe, with elk is kind of different, because they move around so much. You can't
nomadic.
really, get a pattern on them with using game cameras. But to Gilbert's point, the way we use it is, if we have an area where we have feeders and stuff like that, we like to see what's coming in. We like to tag animals that if you're doing any sort of management, you want to take an older deer, you want to make sure you know what it looks like, what kind of deer he is. And then,
It's a huge management tool.
Yeah.
For us.
And then Raph and I use it to kind of, be able to predict what the hogs are doing. And it's extremely helpful to know when and how they're coming in.
And that's good early season before elk start rutting, because I think they're more patternable. But I think once that rut starts, I think it throws a lot of stuff out the window. But I think what Gilbert said, I think, is huge though, because to me, where cows like to be is pretty much the same areas year after year after year, and a lot of that's because they're areas that generally have good feed in them, right? And it's just like we said, Chav told you he could name 4 places where we see animals crossing the highway all the time. There's a reason for that. So I think Gilbert's idea of the corridor is probably the best, because when you find those areas that they like to travel through back and forth from one area to the other, they might change their bedding area, but it's going to be kind of in the same area. They might change their feed, but it's going to kind of be in the same area. But generally they know those corridors to get from. I mean, think about an area that we've hunted, that we know when they go from the bottom how they're going to get up to the top most of the time, almost to a T a lot of times, right? So I think that has a lot of validity to it. And I don't know, I think the other part is just people getting excited. They get a chance to talk about the elk, they see the elk, they show off the pictures, and they do things like that. I just hope they don't get disappointed because they're like, man, I saw 30 bulls in here in August, but where did they go?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a snapshot in time, they were there at one time. If you get a lot of photos and there's a lot of cows in there, well, it's going to be used, but you may not see those bulls again, but there's a good chance a different one will come in.
Sure. Yeah.
But
especially when
I
they
think
start
it's,
coming in.
if you have the early hunt and you get out there, opening morning, it's probably going to be a good spot. But after that, their migration will change. So
as the pressure comes.
Absolutely, Chow. And I'll tell you another use for it, man. Gosh, if you want to put that game cam where you keep your vehicle and your camp,
You keep honest people honest.
Yeah, well, and we've seen where some people have had some issues, and
Man, it's horrible.
you might even find that there's critters coming into your camp as well. So there's different uses for it.
That's right. Joshua's up next. Joshua Cochran out of Roswell, New Mexico. He helped a Minnesota ElkBros grinder, Jeff, pack out his elk. Man,
You are
that's
the
so
man,
awesome,
Joshua.
dude.
But
Way to
and
go, brother. Way to spread some of the ElkBros cheer, man.
and Joshua knows about aliens too, man. He's from
Yeah.
Roswell.
Yeah, being from Roswell, he should, huh?
They have the coolest. They have the coolest alien
Museum.
celebration festival and stuff in Roswell. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
He writes in to us and he says, guys, what is a good call to use when a bull is bugling in the afternoon?
Now, I'm assuming he's not talking about like the brand of call, right?
I think he's
I
the
think he's
type
talking
of
about
call.
the type.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're hearing a bull bugling in the afternoon, it could be, I mean, what you have to do is you have to determine, is that bugle moving?
Right.
Or is he staying in the same place?
If he's staying in the same place, he's bedded.
Yeah, he's bedded, he's just advertising, and I'm telling you, if he is bugling, I want to get in on that guy, right? If he's bugling in the afternoon from a lower feed area, then most likely he's already in his destination. If he's bugling from up on top of a hill, then most likely he's getting ready to, he's going to move to a destination at some point. Now, if this is midday, like Gilbert said, that dude's probably bedded. Right?
Yeah, and I'm assuming in the afternoon maybe he does mean midday. I don't know. For me, Joshua, it would depend on the time of the year. Are we early, late, late season, and also what time of the afternoon, right? I mean, so if we're afternoon, is that 12:30, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? As we get later, those bulls are actually going to start moving back down to their feeding areas and stuff like that.
Or up to a feeding area.
Or up to a feeding area, that's right.
Uh-huh.
But if it's like straight up noon, 1 o'clock, a lot of times they can be already up there in their bedding area. And look, if you got the wind right, man, you can sneak in there on that booger. Like Joe said, he's telling you exactly where he's at. So it's really then about playing the wind and can you make the approach to get in there on him without blowing him out of there? Where he's at now,
So kind of to answer his question, the way I read y'all's answers and adding something to it, I think it also depends of what kind of bugling is he making. Just if you can interpret his bugle as aggressive or as location or as gathering,
just advertising, right?
Advertising. But what I'm getting from you guys is like, okay, if he's given up his location and you can pinpoint what he's doing, then you make a decision to get as close as possible before you even make a call.
Yeah.
And then if you do make a call, if you do make a call, I mean, the way I would do it, Joe, but obviously you guys can correct me here, is that, same way we start. If you don't see them and you want to start bringing them in, you probably start with your cow calls and then see his response to the cow calls and try a location bugle, being a lover instead of a fighter, and then see how he responds to that, and just only escalate up if you see him escalating up with you. That way he'll just try to come in. But if not, just if he responds to something in between, from going up from the cow call to an aggressive bugle, if he responds to something in between, then stick with that.
Oh man, you guys make me so proud now. I mean, just to hear some of the stuff that you guys are doing, and I'm going to add to Luis. If this is a bull that's advertising and he's in his bed and I get close, I'm always going to start with a cow call. Because cow calls always they set you up for so much. You can have that animal that responds to that. And if he responds to that and he starts bugling and coming into you, man, why change anything? You give them what they
Don't
want,
fix what
right?
ain't broke. Yeah.
And one thing I like to do on a midday animal that's bedded, though, is instead of right away maybe testing that temperature, what I might do is instead start introducing some sounds like another bull that's with that cow without
Yeah.
doing a bugle. I can introduce some of those breeding sounds.
Scenarios.
I can, yeah, some huffs, some puffs, some glunks, some whines and different things like that, because he's going to hear that cow. He's going to hear it. But then when he hears another bull's there, instead of me engaging him directly, again, remember, sometimes one of the most effective things
Ignore.
is not to engage that
bet,
animal there.
you bet.
So
And you got to remember too that he may have cows with him. So when you're
Sure.
making your approach, you need to be mindful of those eyes that are going to be watching you, man.
sure. No,
'Cause- and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to sound off every now and then if he's bedded, and you can get in there on him. For me, I'd like to see him before I figure out what I want to do. If I can get eyes on him, man, I know exactly what I want to do because I can see his whole demeanor. A lot of times that's hard to do, but
it is, especially on a bedded midday
Bedded
bull,
bull,
because they're going to have the advantage. You're moving, and they're
generally
not.
he's at a higher vantage.
He's a higher level, yeah, and he's usually in crap,
Yeah.
so hard to see them
Hard to do,
sometimes.
for sure.
But unless there's snow on the ground. But
yeah, we've seen that before.
but Josh, there's a lot of things that talk to that, like Louis said, is his temperament and how he responds. And we always start with cow calls, but so if you're asking what call to use, we always start with a cow call. We just one or two or three little cow calls when we come in to see how he reacts. If I then sound like a bull and not give away any kind of, by doing low guttural bull sounds, and then he screams at that, now things have changed, because I have a bull that it's like Luis has said, he's shown his aggression. And if he screams like that, I might continue what I'm doing. And as I hear him starting to come in and he screams again, if I'm hearing him coming towards me, I don't have to do a lot. He's coming in. But if he's staying over there, he's screaming. Now, if he screams at me, I might smack him in the face, cut him off. And it just kind of depends on the escalation of the situation. And we could have a whole podcast on that. But so hopefully
We do.
we do.
Yeah, we do, for sure.
So hopefully some of that has helped you right there. Okay.
Okay, so next we have Jonathan Bruce again, and I think this is his last question.
Uh-huh.
And again, he's from Eugene, Oregon. He says, do you use synthetic estrus? Is there any difference between that and authentic stuff? When should that stuff be used? Pre-rut to start it off or during the rut? And actually we don't. If anything, we kind of use it, would be more as a cover scent. I've seen Joe Roland stuff many times.
He's become a bit more civilized the last couple hunts.
Well, like I told you, it's because we hunt in groups, and when I hunt by myself or just me and Chav, synthetic estrus, no, never use anything outside the woods. And like Chav said, if anything, we're going to stay as scent free as possible. But if I find fresh urine, I used to constantly roll in the fresh urine and get as stanky as I could, man. And
Thank God he don't know more. I'd stay in the tent with him.
But when we're together, that cancels out everybody. Everybody thinks they smell elk all the time.
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah. That's a disadvantage. You keep smelling elk, and it's you.
We use synthetic estrus and we use authentic stuff in the deer hunting community. So I think maybe he's. I haven't seen any synthetic estrus even on the market. Is there synthetic elk estrus?
I couldn't tell you. I never look for scents
There used
anymore.
to be.
Yeah.
I know there's tons of deer, Tink 69 and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And look, I'm telling you, it works. I've used it, and they smell it. They're going to come look for it, right? Deer are curious animals.
And maybe for a tree stand, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe for...
years ago, I saw a bottle of cow estrus or cow urine.
Mm-hmm.
And I smell cow urine, the real thing, all the time. And when I opened that bottle and I smelled it, yeah, it was like, ooh, that's not it.
Pungent.
You know,
Yeah.
it just seemed out of place to me, and so I never went with that. And so, no, yeah,
But the
so
place to use it is pre-rut and during the rut.
Sure.
There's no doubt about it. I mean,
Sure.
if you have some of it and you want to use it, that's the correct place to be using it.
You could even use it in October, man.
Oh yeah, man! Look, that
post-rut.
first part of that
Yeah,
first.
if it worked, I mean, that's when you would use it. Okay. Brandon Evers from Johnstown, Colorado. Hey, Drew Sayer, you've got a question that has a lot of questions in it. We're going to hit you next time. We're going to end on Brandon here. So, Drew from Birmingham, Alabama, wait till the next show, bro. You're coming up. So, Brandon from Johnstown, Colorado. He says, we hunted a Colorado unit between two 100,000 acre fires. He said the smoke was terrible. I had a cow downwind of me at 50 yards and she couldn't smell me. Said the smoke was so bad my nose was on fire, so I can only imagine how she was feeling. My question is, does the lack of smell affect the rutting? We noticed as the fires picked up, the elk seemed to settle down. And
Interesting.
I definitely think it does, man, because
Should.
well, if you think about it, what starts the rut is when a cow comes in
Scent.
estrus. Those bulls pick up those pheromones, right?
Yep.
Well, Gilbert, you told me about a dog's nose. A dog's nose can pick up
Smells in parts per billion.
parts per billion, right?
Yeah.
And I think an elk's nose is better than a dog's nose.
I would assume so. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So imagine if that smoke is bothering you with our minimal smelling ability, how much it's dysfunctioning an elk's nose. And so I think it could definitely, I mean, it could keep bulls from smelling cows, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think you would definitely see a second and third estrus if that's what's
that
going
area.
on, because a lot of them bulls aren't going to be able to smell those cows coming in.
Yeah.
Although if you have a big bull to cow concentration, the bulls are going to be around the cows, and they might be able to send them up if they catch where the wind isn't blowing that smoke on them the whole time. So I don't know. You know, I think it will affect it.
I think you make a good point. I think the herd bull himself, who's got his cows with him, or, you know, he's staying so close to them and he's trailing them. But those bulls in the wings,
it really affects him.
yeah, it's really going to affect them, man. They're not going to smell when that happens there. And it's them screaming and that bull screaming back and forth that lights it up for everything around there. So, no, I think that could. But I'll tell you this, Brandon, this year everybody talked about how it seemed like the animals were not as talkative. Now, whether that's true or not, I think that's a great conversation because, I mean, we were in them and they were screaming. So, but, you know, if it's a full moon and they're in the trees before daylight, it's kind of like
We had that too.
yeah, if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, you know, did it make a
does
noise?
You dang Skippy, it does.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the elk, man. I mean, if that elk's in the forest and he's bugling, there's nobody else there to hear it. Well, it just sounds like there's no elk bugling. So
Right. That's right, Joe.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good question. You know, I would like to talk with a game biologist too to get their take on it. It'd be something
Sure.
good that you could talk to the game biologist that you talked to up there at Vermejo. What's his name? Joe?
Lance Bernal.
Bernal.
Yeah.
Be good to ask him about that. He probably has some research data that could support or not support it. So give us a few seconds, a few days to do a little bit of research, and maybe we can report back on that.
And now that you mention that, Lance did a podcast with Nata Grande on the last one, and he was really talking about what he does as a biologist and some of the research behind that, and how they come to conclusions about, how many animals to hunt and the effect of that. It was I think everybody should listen to that, man. I mean, it was really a fantastic podcast on elk behavior biology. It was really cool. And I just listened to another one today that on Jim Huntsman, the Western Huntsman podcast. That and I don't want to say the gentleman's name because I'll get it wrong, because it's just, I'm pulling some of that old age thing that Luis is going through, but he is this guy knows more of. I think he wrote the model for northern.
The pressure is on, Joe. I recovered quickly. I remember. You're still having that.
So the northern big game model that we utilize in North America, he wrote this. And he does all the studies on deer, elk, moose.
You talking about Craig Boddington?
No, he's German.
Oh, I got you.
And in fact, I was just listening to this earlier, so I know that I have that on here. And I think, man, I tell you what, they talked about, it was Dr. Various Geist, and cool. his name was spelled, his last name is Geist. Valerius Geist, and it was on ecological balance between animals. And let me tell you what, the things that he talks about in this are mind-boggling that we've never even considered.
That's cool.
And how our northern model of ecology for our big game, and this guy, has nothing against wolves. He just talks facts. But he talks about how introduction of wolves now and some of the things that we're doing with predators are destroying that model. He talks about things about how to that actually whitetails and mule deer can live side by side, but there's some things that we are doing as hunters that cause mule deer to disappear in areas that whitetail come into. I mean, it was fascinating. So I'm throwing that out there that you guys should listen to that. Again, that's the Western Huntsman podcast and Dr. Valerius Geist on there. Check it out.
That's awesome, man. Joe, well, guys, it's been unbelievable, the content that comes out of our coaches and, the leader of the Venezuelan mafia.
Hey, thank you.
Luis. I know he's not that.
I'm going to run for the leader of the Venezuelan mafia, man.
After his senior moment, I knew he needed a little pick-me-up. So,
thank you, brother.
At the end of the day, it's so good to have these discussions for guys that are still out there in the woods getting it done, Joe. I mean, you're hunting still with guiding and stuff like that. So it's been fantastic to get this content out to our listeners. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review. You got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes and you can check out more elk hunting content.
We didn't get a single review last week, man.
That's harsh. That's harsh, man. We need to have everybody going and rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcast and YouTube as well. You can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And guys, if you'd like to have your questions answered on the show, just send your question to info@elkbros.com. Check our academy out when you're on our webpage. It's second to none. Like we say down here from Texas, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Keep your broadheads sharp and your powder dry. We'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace, y'all.